Module 7, we've made it. We're to the last module. Who's been here since the very beginning, since this morning? Okay, all right, most of you. Thanks for sticking it out. Glad to see you. For those of you who have joined us maybe just after this break, yet again, here's my contact information. I won't harp on it. If you really want to get to know me or connect outside of this room, just let me know and I'll hand you a business card and we can tweet or something, whatever you want to do there. Here's our schedule, advanced dial plan. Now we're going to talk about the really fun stuff, variables and functions and expressions and all that fun stuff in our dial plan. So, here's the fourth bullet, conditional branching. So variables, functions, expressions, and conditional branching being the fourth item we're going to talk about. A variable, very generically speaking, a variable is just a label for some value, right? And an asterisk, as with any sort of programming language, also Algebra 1, right? What does x equal? You can define a value to a variable name. So here we're using the example of a box, right? The variable is like the box, and you put the value, sip/server-trunk. That's just a string of characters, really. You're putting that value inside of the variable trunk. So when we dial 1000, we've hard-coded dial technology/server trunk, right? I could define that as the trunk variable and now dereference trunk within my dial plan this way. The advantage here is if I want to reuse that over and over, instead of typing it frequently, just all the time, and then, oh, it's changed, so let me go to all these points in my extensions.conf file and change them at every point. Oh, I forgot one, so now that extension's broken. Well, you define it once. You can define a global variable, that's one type we'll talk about. You define it once and then reuse it elsewhere, or everywhere. So let's talk about channel variables. What is a channel in Asterisk? A communication pathway, perfect. I bet you heard Melissa say that. Yes, exactly right, a communication pathway. A channel is just a connection into or out of Asterisk. It's a communication pathway. A channel variable is a variable that's defined for that one channel. It only exists on that channel. So in this example here, I'm dialing 1000, and I'm using the set application to define a variable number to the value of 0. So now I have the number channel variable defined on my channel. So in other words, the channel between my SIP phone and Asterisk, that channel, that's where this variable exists. When I hang up, that channel variable goes away. All channel variables go away once the channel is torn down, okay? So here we're using set to define number as the value of 0. And then the very next priority, we're using the say number application. The say number application, by the way, says a number. So you just say number, parentheses, 5. Just put the number 5 in there, close parentheses, and you'll hear Allison's voice say 5. That's it. She probably doesn't sound all nasally like that. But that's essentially what say number does. Here, instead of hard-coding the number 5, or the number 0 in this case, we're going to dereference the variable number. So we're setting number to 0, and then say number will use that variable to say 0. Now we have an example of the read application I mentioned earlier. Read is doing a very similar thing. Remember, like background, read will play back a sound file. In this case, the name of the sound file is enter-ext-of-person. Who was not in this session just before the break? Okay, just a couple of. I have a little trick to show you about how to find the contents of those sound files if you'd like. If there's a lot of you, I'll just repeat it, but I don't want to put you all to sleep. So the sound file name is enter extension of the person you would like to dial, and the read application will store your input as the value of the number variable, right? And then playback, you entered, and then say number and dereference number. So now it'll play back, it'll say whatever you've entered, and read stores that for you. So again, this can be accomplished several ways, but this way you only need maybe 4 priorities. Well, really 3, and then hang up for the 4th priority there. Now let's look at some predefined channel variables. That's a user-defined channel variable, number. Predefined channel variables, context, extend, priority, dial status. These are probably the most popular, most well-known system-defined variables. There are many of them that exist on a call. Context, well, let me start with extend because that's the one people tend to use an awful lot. The extend variable, that's just what you've dialed, kind of. What you've dialed will match something within your dial plan. It's really telling you where you are in the dial plan. So if I dial 7,000 and I hit an extension or a pattern match that matches 7,000, then that's what will be dereferenced within my dial plan from the extend variable. So that's extend. That variable just carries the value of whatever part of the dial plan I'm at. Same thing for context and priority. So you can get an idea of exactly where you are within your dial plan at any point. These are very helpful for debugging. We'll look at an example of putting them into like a no-op statement, no-op being another application. But first, the concept here of just predefined channel variables. So let's see, and then we have dial status. Dial status is also a very, very handy channel variable that's defined by the dial application. Whenever the dial application exits, remember all of our examples most of the examples we've had have a timeout, right? Something like 20 seconds. After 20 seconds, end, don't ring them anymore, just go to the next priority. Maybe we've set this up for voicemail. The dial status variable will then tell you, was it no answer? Was it unavail? Channel unavail? Did they hang up? Did they answer? These sorts of things. Again, this is just a channel variable you can dereference within dial plan and then make some decision based on what happened to the dial application. Yes? Wait, a timeout or invalid entry? You mean for the special extensions? Right, so it'll tell you, well, there is a function, the timeout function, which we'll actually see here in a bit, but yeah, the timeout function will allow you to see what your timeout is set to. It also lets you define what your timeout is set to, so how long your timeout is set for. But if you're looking for something to tell you whether you have timed out, is that what you're looking for? Okay. Let's try to build up a use case for that in dial plan. Essentially Right, and we talked about that before the break. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. That's the extension that will be triggered when that condition is met. So when you time out, you would route to the T extension. But I think maybe you're asking for something a little different there. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. You can probably suss that out with some debugging in dial plan, but if you need the behavior to be different, or if you have to know when it's an I or when it's a T, it may be a little bit easier to just use both and have the different behavior for different extensions. Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really great question. Let's see, I usually just say nuts to T and I, and I'll just use E, but I haven't had an extension, I haven't actually timed out an extension with T and E to see which one I would prefer. I would have to test that. So my assumption would be to prefer what normally is used there, maybe a T, but I don't like assumptions. I want to test it and watch it happen and know for sure. Yeah, I'll need to test that. So I'm always growing my list of things to test. So you're on the list of tests. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So system variables versus user variables, as we saw, a user variable of number, capital N, right, but lowercase everything else. Camel case or snake case or whatever you want to call that, mixed case. This is the recommendation for user-defined variables simply because it's much easier to discern. System variables are always uppercase. They're all caps, right? So context, extend, priority, these are all uppercase. When you set your own channel variables, setting those as mixed case or lowercase, something like this, just makes life a bit easier when you're debugging A. Another point I need to mention here, notice that uppercase trunk, lowercase trunk, and then capital T trunk are listed as different variables. That is mostly true. Who's had to deal with the situation in dial plan where you set it with a capital something and you dereference some other variable with a different case and it showed up anyway? No? The rule is, in Asterisk 11 and earlier, these are actually the same variable if they're set and dereferenced in the dial plan. So what in the heck does that mean? If I set and then dereference in the same call, in other words, it's defined and then dereferenced within dial plan, then they would be the same variable. However, you'll see different behavior if you define the variable outside of dial plan, say with the set var parameter in sip.conf. So if you do this, this is outside of the dial plan. It actually is dereferenced or evaluated within the Asterisk core. In that case, they would be different variables. In any case, this is the recommendation. Assume that they are different variables, and also probably don't use a variable name that's the same name all over the place. I mean, the word trunk might be a little too generic, so maybe call it, trunk A or trunk B or something like this to differentiate even further. Now we're to the no-op application. No-op application is one of 3 dial plan applications that you'll want to put in your toolkit for debugging dial plan issues. No-op just prints a message. So here we're dialing 2222, and we set number to 4567. And in the very next priority, we have no-op and then some message. This message will just print to your CLI so long as you have verbosity level of 3 or greater. Oh, sorry? It's echo, yeah. It's essentially like echo in bash. So if you're familiar with Linux in the bash shell, the echo command will just return the value of a variable in Linux. So this is sort of how we can take care of this in dial plan, right? So that's no-op. I don't have a slide for verbose, but we can just look at an example of verbose really quick. Let's talk about this. So no-op, value of number is, and the number, and we can see in the example below there, we can watch our CLI play out executing context, extension at context, priority, no-op channel, variable of number is, and 4567. So this is one way to debug this. Who's a big fan of the verbose application over no-op? All right, me and you, man, right there. So who's heard of the verbose application? Okay. So why don't you like the verbose app? I got more hands there. Why don't you like the verbose application? Huh? Oh. I should have qualified that before today. Okay. So was verbose mentioned in the morning session? At some point, someone just approaching the parking lot said, okay, so the verbose application, what does it do for us? Right. Exactly. No-op will only print that message if your CLI verbosity is at 3 or greater, right? With verbose, you can define specifically what level of verbosity you want your message to print at. So you can say verbose 1, comma, my message at verbose level 1. That will only show up if you have verbosity set to 1 or more. If you're verbose 0, you won't see that message. Right? Yes, exactly right. And just on a personal note, if you're using verbose and you're printing a message and you decide to go with the default in verbose is 0, so the default verbosity level is 0 for the verbose application, if your message has a comma in it and you don't specify a verbose level, then Asterisk is going to get a little upset with you and say, I don't know what hey is. Hey is not a verbosity level, because I tried to use verbose on a message that said, hey, comma, we're doing something or other. So maybe something to watch out for there. All right. And now we come to our function section. Before we jump into that, though, I just want to give you an idea of what that looks like. So extensions. Do we see it here? Okay, so nothing already here, but, oh, actually, I'm going to use extension 1000 here. same. Which, by the way, here's another habit that I have when I'm writing dial plan. When I first define an extension, I'll do the first line, you know, extend. You have to do the whole shebang, no shortcuts. You have to write literally extend, rocket, number, comma, 1. You have to start with priority 1, comma, whatever you're doing. And then after that, just same in, right? So when I get this far, I'll copy that line and just dump a few in there, and then come back later and build out. And then I'll delete lines I don't want to use anyhow. Again, just my habit. Was it verbose? Is that what we were talking about? I just tried to do it there. So, verbose 1, I've defined a verbosity level of 1, right, for this message. Remember, whenever I make a change in extensions.conf, I have to do dial plan reload. Let's see if I can.
Welcome.
All right, so that's going to say something else here in a moment. But let me scroll up just a bit here. All right, background, welcome. Okay, that's what we saw there. And then we have executing verbose. Hey, don't use commas. Now, this is the actual verbose command. So let me, or the output of the verbose application. For set verbose 0. The rest of my dial plan there. All right, again, that call. Okay. Console verbose was 5 and is now off. Let me repeat that.
Welcome.
So, we see all this output. That's for another application. But notice there's no other output before we get to that big, long string of, well, long read of channel variables. Anybody familiar with the dump chan application? That's what we're looking at right here. Go ahead and exit this call. So that extra output that essentially was dumping a list of all channel variables, that's the output of the dump chan application. So if you need to see every channel variable, dump chan is what you want to use there. Verbose, however, will allow you to specify what level you'll see a very specific message. All right. Come on, PowerPoint. All right. So there's a little bit of extra debugging there. For functions, functions in the dial plan are very similar to variables. They can be, in some cases, set, but almost always you can use them to get information about a channel. So to set or get info on a channel is the book definition there for a dial plan function. It acts like a variable, but it takes arguments like an application. So you'll see a set of nested parentheses within a variable, what looks like a variable dereference. It's actually a function. So here we see function, and again, functions are all caps. So the function name is all caps, and then it takes an argument. That's the difference between a function and a variable. It takes no argument. So when you dereference it with the $, curly braces, this is how you can tell you're dealing with a variable or a function. Now we've come to the timeout function. Again, this is where you can either define or get information about your channel. The examples here are using no-op. Digit timeout is timeout, and then the argument is digit. So there's actually a couple. There's digit and absolute. Absolute timeout, by the way, is how long that call can last. So here we're setting it to 3,600. Essentially, you've got 3,600 seconds. That's how long your call is going to last. And at that point, Asterisk will say, you've timed out, and try to route you to the capital T extension. So there's the lowercase t special extension. That's where you're routed when your digit timeout is met. Digit timeout, again, being, okay, I have a couple of extensions I can dial here. I'm going to hit 1, and, okay, digit timeout. That's where you'll meet that you'll meet the lowercase t extension. And at the very bottom here, we have the len function. Programming in here. Just any, okay. So who wants to tell everyone else that didn't raise their hand about the len function? What do you think the len function probably does? What do you think it's doing here? Yeah, returns the length of its parameter, exactly, or argument, or yes, exactly right. So here, I'm dialing x dot. That's a pattern match. If you haven't seen a pattern match before, within dial plan, essentially you can, instead of writing out 7001, 7002, 7003, and so on and so forth, you can use a pattern match to match any extension that matches well the pattern. Here, we see a pattern match that is 1 digit long, that's the capital X, so 1 digit, and then a dot, which is the wild card in this case, and the dot is 1 or more digits. So I would have to dial at least 2 digits to hit this pattern match. I could dial 57 if I wanted, and it would still match. Granted, nothing else within my context was a better match. So here, let's say I dial 555, and I hit that pattern match. What would I hear from the say digits application? 3, exactly right. It's because my extend variable is, well, what I've dialed, 555, and that's 3 digits long, so that's the result of the len function. So say digits will say 3. So here's some more functions. Caller ID, probably the most popular function, popular as in how frequently it's used. You can use it to set specifically the name or the number or all information for that channel for their caller ID info. So here we're setting the caller ID number to, well, that's the main number for Digium, 256-428-6000. And then in the next priority, we're setting the name to Digium Inc. And then we're dialing outbound over SIP. We're passing the extension, or we're passing the digits that we've dialed minus the first digit to our provider. So who's familiar with substrings within variables? This :1 business right here? Yeah. I'm sorry? Right, it'll skip the first digit and return what's left. So in this example, I've dialed 9, 3 more digits, and then any other number of characters after that, right? So essentially, this is just a way to, within the dial plan, in one step, just drop the 9 off the front and pass the rest of this to my provider. Because my provider doesn't want to start a number with 9, right? Most providers don't. So there's substrings with the extend variable. We also have strf time. This is a function within the dial plan that acts exactly like your plain old school Linux strf time function. So you can use it essentially to print a timestamp on your CLI. And here, again, these examples are just to talk about concepts. You would probably use this in naming a file. If you're going to use like a system call from the Asterisk dial plan to write a file or save a record sound file or something like this, you can use it to put a timestamp on it. And you can even control the format output. So that's why we say run man strf time on a Linux shell. You'll get the man page for the Linux function, which acts the same. You could also do core show function strf time on the Asterisk CLI. So here we're just no op by itself. You'll get that format sat, shorthand for Saturday, July. It should print to your CLI. Maybe think about that for a moment. Perhaps you can redirect the output. Although your CLI output is going to also save to your Asterisk logs. So that'd be one way to get a record of it, but I suspect you have a different idea in mind. Yeah. Right. Yeah, the response will print to your CLI, and it'll also show up in your Asterisk logs. But if you want to take that and redirect it to a file or something like this, then and really what you do in that situation is write a bash script and then use system to call the bash script and do all of that. So, all right. So let's see. We had and finally math. Although we'll talk about expressions in just a moment, the math function, all by itself, somewhat, will allow you to just, you can just go to town and write the most convoluted calculator known to man. My Asterisk PBX is actually a calculator, right? You can just call it in and please enter your digits and what do you want to add to it and this sort of thing. Really, the math function allows you to do, well, math on your dial plan. It also gives you the option of using either a float or integer. So again, if you're getting into that level of dial plan logic, you can use the math function for this purpose. Is everybody good with the concept of float versus integer numbers? Essentially, okay. So float essentially is decimal point numbers. So you can specify that here. We see 5 plus 5 is 10, but it's 10.00000. So. All right. And now we're to expressions. So an expression, as you can see from the slide, is a statement that returns a value. This value could be a string, it can be true or false, Boolean, it can be an integer. It's composed of strings, variables, operators and operands, and also other expressions. So you can nest expressions as well. You would use this to test values or alter a string. Again, do more math in your dial plan, which is, I mean, hey, what are we doing here? We're here to do some math in dial plan, right? Most importantly, perform logical comparisons. We're slowly creeping back towards GotoIf. That's where we're heading with this. So expression syntax. A variable and a function variables and functions are dereferenced with $, curly brace, right? So not when you set it, but when you dereference it, when you want to get the value out of a variable or function. You have $, curly brace, name of the function or variable. An expression is $, square bracket, all right? And again, these nest, so you can dereference a variable inside of an expression and then use that as part of your expression. So there are mathematical operators, okay, just your basic, add, subtract, multiply, divide. Also there's modulus, if you want to get the return from, the floor division, right? If you want to just pull that back from this sort of an integer, a float, not an integer. In any case, basic math, in our example here, 1 plus 2. I don't think we need a dial plan for that kind of an equation. Relational operators, probably a lot more useful for the use case we're talking about here. Is it equal to the same thing? Is it greater than and less than? Is it only less than? Is it not equal to? That's what the bang equals will tell you. And here we have an example. We're asking the expression parser, is var1 less than var2? Is that a true or a false statement? And then, depending on whether it's true or false, we'll do something in our dial plan. And finally, we have Boolean operators. We have and or. Essentially, this will evaluate whether or not both expressions are true. So if expression 1 is true, or variable 1 in this case, if var1 is true, and, that is two expressions. So var1 greater than 0, if that is true and var is less than 9, right? If they're both true, one is true and the second one is true, then it will return true. With the or, if I replace that ampersand with a pipe for the or statement, then if either are true, then it will return true. So let's look at an example where we're going to increment the value of a variable. Here we're setting var2 to the value of an expression. So the first thing that happens is the expression parser will be called and say, okay, give me the result of 2 plus 3, which is 5, and that value will be stored as var2. So now if we dereference var2, we'll see 5. We won't see square bracket 2 plus 3, etc. We'll see the actual result of that expression. And so in no-op, var2 contains value, etc. We can see the play out here in the dial plan. var2 contains value 5. All right. Here we're going to reference or dereference the count variable within an expression that is going to then be set, the evaluation of which will be set to count. Well, if we go to this variable, if we go to this priority first, and we try to dereference count before it's been defined, the expression parser is going to choke. It's It's gonna crash and burn and explode and die, and horrible things will happen. Really, it's just not going to work, and your call will fail. Well, that priority will fail. Just go to the next one and try to continue the call. So that's why it's very important that we use set to initialize or define the variable first. So here we're setting it to 3, and then we're going to call it within the expression to define itself. So you just don't want to get into a circular reference with a null value, because the expression parser will not handle this well. So here we're just saying count equals 3, and now we're going to say count equals the value of count plus 1, and now it's 4. So here we just have a very simple rudimentary counter. We're just incrementing that variable value. So now we're to the GotoIf application, how it ties in with expressions. So GotoIf, this is the syntax. First you have an expression, and you have question mark, destination if true, colon, destination if false. That's the whole syntax for GotoIf. If the expression is true, it will go to, using the same rules as the goto application. Remember, a goto application can take 3 arguments, context, extension, and priority, but it could take 2 or just 1 argument. If you want to go to just a priority label, if true, and that's what you'll define after the question mark, but before the colon. And then if you want to go to some context, extension, and priority, if false, then that's what you'll define after the colon. So here's an example using test variable. Whoa. Using a test variable, we're setting test variable to the value of 1, and then GotoIf will test that or verify whether, evaluate whether that value is greater than 2. Since that statement is false, in this example, it's going to go to monkeys. Right? Monkeys just being a priority label that jumps down to playback TT monkeys. So, has anybody explored the sound files? Have you noticed that there's like TT? You know what TT stands for? I'm going to rewind just a hair. The dial status variable, right? One of those values that it could be set to, core show application dial. As you can imagine, the dial application is used an awful lot in Asterisk. This help file is very long. We'll get there one day. Here we go. So here are the potential results of the dial status variable. Notice there is a torture value that this variable could dereference as, right? So in the earlier days of Asterisk, a very popular, and at least popular at my house, still, a very popular use for Asterisk was to take care of the telemarketer issue. These days we don't have a whole lot of telemarketers bothering us. It still happens on occasion, but now we're really worried more about spam email, right? But the torture dial status result is essentially a way that you could use your dial plan to send someone to a torture context, and it's a menu that just annoys them until they cry. So it'll be just very, very generic and say, okay, I might be interested in your product, but I'm very busy, so I've set up this system to try to filter the people I want to talk to towards me. So if you're calling from the Northern Hemisphere, press 1, Southern Hemisphere, press 2. And then just go from there to like slightly more granular. And you had a question? We haven't. Well, have we thought about it? Is that the question? Of course we've thought about it. No, I can't say we have any plans for that, but that wouldn't stop you from doing such a thing, right? But essentially the idea is when you can set up a menu like that and torture is still around, there's no reason to just kill it off, right? So reeling it back to where we are now, TT monkeys, TT weasels, you see a lot of sound files that ship with Asterisk that start with TT, that stands for telemarketer torture. So these are one of the sound files you might see with telemarketer, your telemarketer torture IVR. Let's see. So here's our GotoIf example. Now, do I have to define a result if true and false? Do I have to do that every time? Maybe I just want to set up a sort of a gate, right? If this is good, then you can proceed through this part of the dial plan. If this is not good, go somewhere else and do something else, right? This is exactly why you can omit a destination for the GotoIf application. Here we see GotoIf, test variable is greater than 2, That's our expression. And then we're omitting a true destination. It's just question mark, nothing, colon, right? There's nothing in between there. And we still have monkeys defined. So if this is true, this expression evaluates to true, then it's just going to drop down to the next bit of dial plan. The reason being, we have no true destination. So the rule is, if you omit a destination for GoToIf, and that's the result of your expression, then the dial plan will just go to the very next priority. Right? If it's false, it'll skip playback TT weasels and go to monkeys. So let's look at a slightly more involved situation. We're setting test variable to 1. That's old news by now. I've only had it on the past 4 slides. And we have a begin priority label, and GoToIf test variable is greater than 2, weasels or monkeys. So when I first dial 6137, test variable equals 1. So what will I hear? Weasels. Who said that? Whoa. Is it weasels or monkeys? Monkeys, yeah. See, because this is false. Since it's false, I'm going to monkeys. Right. Now I know how to wake everybody up. I just scoff into the microphone and make a big boom. So since it's false, we go to monkeys. And what happens in monkeys? We play back monkeys, of course. And then we're going to set test variable equals the value of test variable plus 1. And then go to begin. Now test variable is 2. 2 is not greater than 2, still false. We'll hear monkeys again and increment our variable once again and go back to begin. And now test variable is 3. The expression is true. Now we're going to hear weasels. Right. Everybody on board? We're all on the same call? Okay. So what happens if I go here? Instead of saying go to begin, what if I just said go to 1, being the first priority of my current extension? Yeah. It'll set to 1 over and over. My increment would never actually matter because I'm setting it to 1 over and over. All right. So now we have a improved IVR example. Now here is essentially the same IVR we looked at some slides earlier with a little more functionality built in. So we've still got answer. Now we're going to set failed attempts to 0 and see if you can guess what kind of functionality we want to see here. We're setting failed attempts to 0. How many times did you fail to dial a valid extension, really? And then menu beginning, GoToIf failed attempts is greater than 2. If that's true, go to hangup, which essentially is the hangup, it's the hangup priority label, but it just hangs up. If it's false, then fall through your dial plan. We're going to say background, main menu, and then wait extend for 5 seconds. So they'll have the duration of the sound file, main menu, as well as 5 seconds to dial some DTMF input. And if they dial something invalid, then it will go to the invalid or the I special extension, and it's going to increment set failed attempts to failed attempts plus 1, and then go to main menu. Not go to the very beginning. We don't want to set it again to 0. We're just going to increment it, whether they time out, they take too long to dial 1, 2, 3, or 0, or if they dial some number that doesn't exist in this context. They dial 5, and that's not an extension in the phone's context. This might be a really good example of where to use the E extension, since it's the same thing and it's complicated. All right. And finally, we have an example of improved voicemail. So the voicemail application will accept arguments, more arguments than just the voicemail box, as well as the voicemail box voicemail context. You can offer the B option or the U option. So those will essentially change the greeting of the caller, for the caller. So if I call into 7001 and A. Dorner does not answer in 20 seconds, if he doesn't answer, then I will hear the busy message. Yeah, that's right, yeah, unavailable. Otherwise, it would be busy because dial status will tell us whether they were busy or unavailable. And the greeting is a little bit different. It'll say, this caller is on the phone versus this person is unavailable. Yes, absolutely, and that's a really good example. I want to look at that. So let's say, actually, I have an example already written out. So with voicemail, and this is a slightly different way to handle what we just saw on the slide, it's all crammed into one line. But here, we're using extend to dereference as the voicemail box number. This, again, assumes that my mailbox is 7003, but that tends to be how those play out. Mm-hmm. Right. So in this case, you're probably what you're imagining is handled very handily by a Gosub. So has anybody dealt with subroutines in Dialplan before? So there's macro, that's been around for quite a while, and Gosub is new, a little newer. It's not like it didn't come out this week. It's been out for a few years now, but yeah, Gosub is very much like a go-to that you can pass arguments with, or pass variables with, I should say. So something like, see all this content here. So yeah, let's just build a really quick Gosub while we're here. So I'm going to use a pattern match of just 700 any number. What that pattern match means is if you dial 7004 or 7005, it will match on this pattern. Now, in this exact example, it actually wouldn't because I literally have 7004 right here, and literals will match before a pattern match. So we're not done yet. I'll comment those out, and then we can see what happens. So there's my pattern match to match either 7003 or 7004. And out of force of habit, I'm going to leave myself a breadcrumb. Then we have I'm going to call my subroutine standard extend. I'm going to use a dash there just in case. And I'll start with the begin extension and the one priority there. So this sort of looks like goto, and that's because, well, essentially it could be goto. I could just say goto, standard extend, begin one, and that'll be some other context extension priority. I'll build that out. Let's see what's below here. Here, well, there's subdialer, which is an example, but let's build it out here. So again, the extension is just the word begin. An extension doesn't have to be a number in Dialplan. You can just define it as whatever you need it to be. And since my Gosub, or what will ultimately be my Gosub, is going to go to the begin extension, that's what I'm writing it as here. All right. Now I want to take all the functionality that I've had to repeat in both lines and just plunk it down in my subroutine here. Now, if I call this Gosub, of course, I'm only going to ring Doug's phone, right? So I need to find a way, I need some way to customize what's going to happen to this dial statement. Within my Gosub, you change that from it's no longer a goto, it's a Gosub. I'm going to pass an argument here. So let's say SIP Doug's phone. And for Doug's phone, actually, I don't want to use a pattern match. Although we got to talk about it for a moment, it's going to be Woo. It's going to be actually number 4, so I'm going to replace that with 4. And while I'm at it, I'll go ahead and comment these guys out. So there's no more ambiguity in my dial plan. Okay. So now extension 7004 still should still ring Doug's phone. And I'm passing this first argument here as an argument that I'll dereference within the Gosub. So let's get rid of all of that. Say arg1. So now, when I dial 7004, I'll see my no-op application, and then I'll hit the Gosub, which will go to standard extend, extension begin, and then priority 1. At the bottom of... There's not an explicit hang-up call. Asterisk will first, when Asterisk runs out of priorities to execute for this extension, or any extension, it will look for an H extension. So this is yet another special extension, the H extension. Asterisk will attempt to route the call to an H extension if it exists in your current context. If it doesn't, then Asterisk will tear down the call. So it is a good habit if you have a lot of pattern matches within the same context to end everything with the hang-up application, and I just do it as a matter of habit so that I don't see unexpected behavior. I have tested that before where I had, extension 7000, literally extension 7000, and then a pattern match that would match there below it without a hang-up. And Asterisk attempted to execute that other dial plan at the same time tear down the channel. So again, you'll see maybe some unexpected behavior if you don't hang up and you have a pattern match just below because of the auto fall through behavior of dial plan. So yeah, something to look out for there. Let's see. Oh, right. Since I'm talking about it, let me go ahead and put a hang up here. So now I've got extension 7004 will go to standard extend. Now what happens right here? What happens with the extend variable within my Gosub? What's that going to dereference as? Begin. Yeah, because begin is the extension that I'm at in the dial plan, right? And since there's no begin voicemail box, that's not going to work. So what we might want to do is just pass the value of extend along with Gosub, just like we did the SIP endpoint name, right? Whoa, go back right there. Okay. So now when I call Gosub, extend will dereference as 7004 and be passed as arg2. So I can go down here. Not arg23. How about arg2? So now we have a Gosub or a subroutine in our dial plan that has the same behavior whenever I call it, and it'll just use arg1 to dial, in this case, SIP Doug's phone, but I can replicate the behavior of the other extensions with a lot less work. Now I can just say 7003 is, I think it's just Joe's phone, but in any case, you see the whole point here, right? arg1, if I dial 7003, now arg1 would be SIP/Joe's phone. Okay. There is. It's called return. And I'll bump that up a little bit so everyone can see. So there is a return application. The return application will at the end of the Gosub, return to this point of origin. Now here, we're only returning after voicemail with a unavailable message. With the busy message, we just hang up, right? But if you want to control hang up outside of the subroutine, then maybe you just replace this with return as well, right? So in either case, it's going to return and execute a hang up. So, for example, if you would like to do it this way. Let's see. Anything else about Gosub? Let's look at our example that was built a little bit earlier. Whoa. I'm using my home row to navigate. That's why you keep seeing like H. So in this example, we've used, arg1, and then GotoIf dial status is, okay, so looks like I built mostly the same thing. I didn't add return to that example from earlier, but this is the behavior of a subroutine within dial plan. So, any questions or ideas about what else could be done with subroutines? All right. Now there was one other item in sip.conf that I don't want you to leave without. It's the idea of template. Who's dealt with templates in Asterisk config files? Yeah. So, not unlike a Gosub and dial plan, a template is applicable to several Asterisk configuration files. So here you can see that Mel's phone, Justin's phone, these SIP endpoints have a few items that are defined exactly the same. So we could say, instead of rewriting this over and over, we could use a template, and I'm going to call my template my SIPs. And this section is defined as a template because I have the parentheses, bang, parentheses at the end of it. So that's how we know that this is a template section. And anything that I define within this section, I can then apply to other sections in sip.conf. So type equals friend, host equals dynamic. Again, these are just settings that I know I'm going to reuse, and I don't want to have to type it over and over. Secret equal, probably don't want to do that with a template, do you? You could. Yeah, you could if you really want to, and it'll break. Yeah, you could, and it'll break. Or, well, yeah, it'll break your security for sure. So not that. Context, maybe you want to use context for all of them. Probably, maybe not use mailbox, maybe. But again, you get the idea, right? So we'll say context and be done with this. Local phones. Now, when I want to apply the template, I'll have to use parentheses, name of the template. So now Mel's phone will still have type equals friend, will still have host equals dynamic, will still have a context of local phones. The other interesting thing about templates is you can apply a template and then you can override said template. So let's say I want to use the MySips template for Mel's phone or however many phones I want to use, but in this one situation, I want to test something out, so I'm going to give her a new context for just a minute. Then I'll change it back, I swear. Context equals testing, and that'll be just some context in dial plan where I'm testing something out. So once I apply this, everything else in the template works, but whatever I've redefined within that section will take precedence. You can also define multiple templates and apply multiple templates. You just delimit them with a comma. Right. So here I would just have some other template. Again, it's not a template until I do that, until I have the parentheses, bang, parentheses. Until I do that, it's just another section header. It's just another part of sip.conf with some SIP account named other template. Oh, now it's a template that I've added this extra bit here. I can even, oh, that's a curly bracket. You all just let me keep talking like I knew, and you saw it, you didn't tell me. Okay. So here's my other template. I can inherit templates as well. So I can say, define it as a template and then say my SIPs. And then do something else within this other template, and over here, just have other template. and it will inherit the contents from those other nested or inherited templates. If they have the same information, oh, if they're defining the same parameters, let's see. I'm trying to visualize that in my head. I would have to, I haven't tested it, but now I will. But I'm assuming that it would be the last one. That makes the most sense as the most recently applied settings, so or most locally applied settings, right? So it's local to just my section here in Mel's phone. That takes precedence over a template. If this template includes a template, whatever is applied here is going to take precedence over the original template. That behavior makes sense to me, but yeah, usually when I'm nesting a template or inheriting a template, I am defining different things in both. If I'm going to customize, I'm going to do it directly in the endpoint section. Yeah, great question. Also on the list of things to test tonight. So, all right, I don't know what kind of night you guys are going to have, but I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to be testing dial plan, figuring some things out. All right. Yes. Let me write that really quick. So, during the break, we were actually talking about set var. So, one of the ways you can define a channel variable within your dial plan is using the set application. A way to define a variable that is defined only when this endpoint makes a call is with the set var parameter. Now, this one looks a little weird because it has two sets of equals. It has a set of two equal signs, right? So instead of set var equals something, you have set var equals variable name equals value. So here, my user code is defined as 7002. So whenever Justin's phone makes a call, whenever this endpoint makes a call in the dial plan, I'll have a channel variable of user code. And if I dereference it, it'll be 7002. So this is one way you can get around the issue of having voicemail main set up as a regular extension that anybody can dial, and then they have to put their PIN number in. You could programmatically control that with a combination of this and dial plan logic. So they can, if Justin's phone dials, his own extension, for example, if set var is equal to, that voicemail box, then send it to his own voicemail main, and he can listen to his messages without having to type in his actual mailbox number. So let's look at an example of that. I believe I have, let's look at, here we go. So Doug's phone, I've now uncommented Doug's phone, which is my D70 here. Set var equals department equals marketing, right? So I'm going to have that phone call the, I want to say it's the 1000 extension. Oh, I know what I'll do. Right, so here we can use dump chan to just get everything. So I'm going to use this phone to dial 1000. Let me hop out of here. And I have to reload because I changed several things there. So now let's do...
Welcome.
All right. I'll go ahead and kill that call so we won't get any more surprises. So we can see one of the variables is department equals marketing. So within my dial plan, I could have something like GotoIf, the department variable equals marketing, and GotoIf the torture chamber, or something, just whatever you want to do with calls being routed, from the marketing department, or any other very important department. So, any questions about set var there? Okay. Let's see. I think we're at the bottom. Yes, that is the end of that module and the end of Asterisk from scratch. And we have a few minutes left for questions. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Let me do core core show hints. So from the CLI, you can do core show hints to get a look at what is actually defined in your dial plan. What you're defining in dial plan with a hint is essentially a subscription of presence from that extension. So an extension hint is an aggregate of all the devices that are listening to that extension's, or listening for that extension's presence information, right? So in this example, that's why I did this, because saying it out loud doesn't quite capture it. Here we have, well, there's auto hint, Jane's phone and Doug's phone. That's part of DPMA, and that's exactly how the automatically configured or automatically built phone book in DPMA achieves that with the auto hint. But here we have 7002 local phones is subscribed to SIP station 7002, right? So when the and here it's state is unavailable because I don't have it registered. While it's unavailable, any endpoint that is subscribed to that hint will know that that endpoint is unavailable. So this is how you can define within Asterisk, make sure that this endpoint is aware when they're unavailable, when they're on a call, when they are available, etc. So yes, so for 7002 we see defined there. Let me do a dial plan show 7002, and here's a nifty trick, by the way, for dial plan show. While I'm thinking about it, dial plan show shows everything, and then dial plan show context. You can specify an extension. So I'm pretty sure it's local phones. Let's try 7002 at local phones, and it worked. Okay, so we have just this one extension. So we can see the hint for SIP 7002 is what we're listening to for the extension of 7002. Now, again, this is an incomplete config for the hint. We're really looking for an endpoint to subscribe to, but the endpoint being subscribed to the extension is how we can essentially broadcast that through the dial plan to whatever endpoint is subscribed. Yeah. What else do we have? Cool. I'm going to hop into extensions.conf again. All right. Any other questions before we adjourn? Yes. Well, Melissa told me a little bit earlier. We'll be able to send those out. If you want us to send you the slides, if you could just give me your business card or contact information, and we'll be in touch shortly. So, sorry, I saw his hand first. Uh-huh. Ah, okay. So there is a little bit of a difference between what I was describing as a pattern match versus the digit map you would define in the phone. However, well, here's an example with the 6,000 range. Let me highlight that really quick. So here we have a pattern match of 6XXX, right? If I dial 6000 or 6555 or 6050, all of these will match on this pattern. Now, again, that's a little different than what you may be describing with the phones we were discussing earlier. The phone itself can also have a filter of sorts that will help you decide whether or not it should send the digits to Asterisk. So that's something that you wouldn't control in dial plan. You would control that in the configuration for the phone. All right. Is the purpose of pattern matching clear, though? Okay. Yeah, essentially, all this means is if I dial 6001, then I'm going to dial SIP outbound trunk as a variable, and then my extend will be passed over the line to the trunk. If I dial 6010, same thing. It'll match on that pattern. So the pattern I'm defining is literally starts with a 6 and has 3 more digits. All right. And a question back here. I'm sorry. Uh-huh. Yes, features.conf is still very much alive and kicking in Asterisk 11. So features.conf is where you can control in-call features, so things like, press star 97 to start recording the call, or press a certain DTMF digit, really, digit sequence to maybe transfer the call, or maybe call a custom function. Yeah, these are all still a part of features.conf, and that's also where you can control and define call parking. So if you ever look at your dial plan and you see, the parking extension, I didn't write a parking extension in extensions.conf. Why does that exist? Well, it's actually defined within features.conf. So again, not an actual extension that you'll write, you'll just include it. All right. Anything specific you were looking for there? Or? All right. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, you can. So one of my other very favorite troubleshooting or debugging tools is the originate command. So I can use originate from the Asterisk CLI to originate a call from Asterisk to some endpoint. Right. So before I do that, I'm going to get the name of a SIP endpoint really quick with SIP show peers. All right. So I'm going to try Doug's phone. So originate SIP / Doug's phone, not phones, phone. And there's two ways to use the originate command. You can originate a call to a channel, here where you're doing a SIP channel, originate a call to a SIP channel and execute an application, or connect it to an extension in your dial plan. Right? So here I'm just going to do an application because I've been waiting all day. Thank you so much. I've been waiting all day to hear the sound file. So application, I just have to say the word application. Don't connect to an extension, use an application. I'm going to say playback, and I want to say it was bomb. I think that was it. Zombies is a great one. If this doesn't work, then we'll try this one. So my phone started ringing immediately, and it says it's from anonymous. So let me turn it up just a bit. Oh, it failed. So my sound file doesn't exist. I'm going to find it really quick. I want to grep, this is how I found it earlier. Bomb squad, okay. Let's, squad.
Thank you for calling. Your anonymous tip has been recorded and the bomb disposal team has been dispatched to your location. No further action is required. Unless you require a clean pair of shorts, we cannot help you there.
Yeah, not my department for that last bit there. So this is how you can use the CLI to originate a call and, prank your friends. Really to troubleshoot some dial plan, right? Because along with that, you can connect them to an extension. So maybe I want to originate a call to an endpoint, and instead of application, I'll use extension. So extension, I'm just going to take a guess without looking, because we're getting close on time. All right. So again, I've originated a call to this channel. I'm going to answer.
The person at extension
And they're not available.
001 is unavailable. Please leave your message after the tone.
So I don't leave them a message. Again, I was just trying to connect them to an extension that I thought I had defined in my dial plan. Evidently I did, but that endpoint's not registered at it's Mel's phone. She's not in the room, so her, SIP soft client on your cell phone. Yeah. From the command line? Let's see. How's that? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, you could use use originate to call. Wait, you were saying what you said app Swift? Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that one. What is that? What are you doing with app Swift? I'm gonna find out while you're talking. Oh, okay, okay. Ah, you're not talking about a dial plan application. Okay. When you, yeah, my head was all here, and when you said AppSwift, I haven't seen AppSwift in the dial plan before, but yeah, you're talking about using an AGI call, right? Using, okay. Yeah, so, yeah, if you have that set up outside of dial plan, then you could use originate to hit that. So that'd be one way to do that. Yeah, but directly from the dial plan, maybe call application, if you have a bash script that could achieve that for you, you could use a system call, application system call, and pass parameters to it, just like I did with, so with playback, I passed the parameter of bomb squad. You could pass the system application the parameter of run this bash script. So kind of cheating. It's not directly, no, it just doesn't use just the CLI. But a lot of that is, can be achieved much easier with a bash script or from Linux. How are we on time? Let's see. All right. Yeah, there's 1 minute until 5. So yeah, if there are no other questions, then thanks everyone very much for coming. I was really glad to see you here. Thank you. And